So this is April with Red and April off grid. So people have been asking for an update of the garden. So here's how it's looking. Looking pretty good. We got a bunch of mulch in here. I have some video of that I'll be showing you. And I've got some more mesquite topsoil here that I'm going to be spreading around some of these plants. So here's the beans. Some of the beans are looking kind of yellow. I covered them in topsoil, but I didn't add more topsoil to the bed, so I probably should have did that, but I've been trying to add some as I gather it. So here's the beans, looking a little yellow, but otherwise doing okay. And then we have some beets and radishes and some kale in here. And I have had to replant some stuff that didn't come up, so I have some new okra. I try to keep them under these salad containers with vents. There's a lizard in that one, to keep the wind off of them and to keep them a little more moist until they outgrow them. So that's what I do with those salad containers, and then I try to put some kind of cage around them just to keep the birds from scratching down at the base and tearing them out of the ground. Typically seems to be what happens. So I keep the metal cages around them until they outgrow those, and then they should be good. This is a butternut squash. Last year I planted spaghetti squash, but we decided not to do that this year. Here's some okra. We do have a lot of tiny grasshoppers, so I've been trying to spray these with neem oil and a little bit of soap, so hopefully that'll work, because they're getting attacked pretty bad. Just little tiny grasshoppers. Hard to keep those out of the garden, but the neem oil seems to be helping. So there's the okra. This is a zucchini. We just picked 2 good-sized zucchini yesterday, so it's starting to do well. And I have some kale and okra. And then over there is a cantaloupe. And then I have a couple of cucumber right here. Some more kale, and then most of these are okra. So here's some of the okra that came up with the first planting. Definitely has some bug damage, but hopefully we can get rid of the grasshoppers. Last year in the fall we had a whole bunch of grasshoppers, so we'll see how they do this year. There's one on there, just little tiny grasshoppers, which I'm sure will become big grasshoppers, so hopefully we can get those under control. And planted a couple more okra here, and here's a squash. And then here's our yellow zucchini, which I planted one of these last year, and it never even got this big throughout the whole season, so this one is just huge. These planters aren't ideal for it, but it is doing well, just it kind of scrunches. I didn't expect it to get this big, so it's already kind of outgrowing this, and it's a little harder to keep it wet enough. And we've had some mice chewing on the stems of the plants. There it is. So I put a mouse trap in here, and I've caught 4 mice, and that seems to be it. So the mice were chewing on those, had to take care of that. And we just planted a cherry tomato in here. Last year we did the yellow pear. And I've had those to where they were really good, but this variety was not very good. So we just did a regular cherry tomato. It got blown sideways, so I'm trying to encourage it to grow in this direction. Starting to get some ripe tomatoes down there. That was the thing with the yellow pear, is that they didn't produce any tomatoes for a very long time, so glad this will be a little earlier. And here's a new bed I made out of a futon that we had. Put some stakes in. I was going to do beets and radishes in here, but a lot of them didn't come up. I think the soil had a little too much clay in it. I needed more sand and looser topsoil. So now I have some dill, and then I planted a squash in the middle here. I need to take this netting off and do some weeding in there, and then just also add in some more topsoil around some of the plants, especially around the beans. So it's doing pretty well. I've got some wildflowers that came up in here. Some of them are in places where I was able to leave them. So I have some sunflower type plants and some little daisies that came up. And this also came up naturally. I think it might be called a sand bell. We covered all of this in mulch, which has been nice. I think it helps keep the dirt from being splashed up on the plants and causing disease. And I know some people don't like the city mulch, but we've had fine success with it. It could have some stuff on it, but definitely nothing that's killing the plants. We've used it last couple of years. I also wanted it in here to help with ant control because we have a lot of little sugar ants that bring aphids and also bite you. So I wanted to get some mulch in here, and so far it's looking good. I think it's supposed to be a hot and dry summer. So here's our garden update on June 20th. So it is now Monday, June 26th. So it's about 7:15 in the morning. Just thought I'd do a little tour outside here of the bushes and plants and trees that we planted. Here's a couple of plants I planted by the door. I planted these last winter. They're doing okay. We have the evaporative cooler going. It's 75 degrees out here, so trying to get the house cooled off in the morning. So at this time of year, the sun is really far back in the horizon. So over here is our solar panels. So we're not making a whole lot of power yet, but a little bit. But this is the most effective time to run the evaporative cooler. We'll probably get up well over 100 degrees or 102 or so today. So trying to get things cooled off, and then we'll shut the house up and keep it closed up during the day and then turn it back on later this evening. So the house has been ranging from about 73 degrees. We can cool it off to about 73 in the morning, and then we shut it up during the day and it gets up to about 81. And then we turn the evaporative cooler on again in the evening. So it's really holding the temperature really well and doing great. I know that's a little warmer than some people would prefer, but it's quite comfortable when it's 103 outside. And we keep a fan on us, so it's doing well. The house is just really maintaining the temperature. It only drops 3 to 5 degrees overnight or during the day, so doing great. Love this passive design. The exterior insulation is working really well. So we still have some mulch we need to get spread around these trees. I've been working on it a little bit at a time as I'm watering. I'll show you a look at the trees we have planted. So this is a plum, and this is something we had planted over by the well house, and something ate all of the roots off of it, and we discovered it, and it was still alive. So we decided to stick it in the sand pile here, and amazingly, the roots have grown back. And it's doing well. This tree was 2 years old when the roots were all eaten off of it. But amazingly, it has survived. We just stuck it in the sand pile just before we went on a trip. We had discovered it, and it has came back out. The ants have attacked it once, so that put it back a little bit, but now it's doing good. We have found that the leafcutter ants are our biggest enemy out here. They will strip all of the leaves off of a tree in a couple of days, so we barely caught this one in time. And this is a pomegranate. It dies off every year and comes back. This is a wonderful pomegranate, which I think typically aren't supposed to make it in our zone. It's a zone 9, although this tag said 7, so I thought maybe it would be okay. So I don't know. Maybe it'll make it, but I think it's just going to die back every year and try to come back. We are zone 7 here. We get down to about 5 degrees in the winter is what we've seen the last 2 years. Last year it was 7, and the year before it was 5. So we're a pretty cold and late zone. The mesquite trees didn't come out until about May 1st. So we're pretty late here. We have some wildflowers coming up all over. These are really pretty. And people have asked if we leave out water for the animals. So here's just a couple of water dishes here. I put rocks in there to keep stuff from falling in and drowning. This is mostly for the birds and small animals. And I have some on the other side of the house also, and then some over by the garden. And so here is our fig tree. We planted this last year, and it seems to die back every winter also, but I have hope that maybe it'll eventually survive the winter. So we'll see. It's supposed to be a zone 7, so it should be okay in this area. But that tends to die back every year. My son-in-law said they had that happen with their fig trees, and then they eventually grew into decent-sized trees, so we'll see. This is I think it's a spaghetti squash that just came up from some of the compost I was spreading around. And here's my favorite. It's an apricot. I love that the new growth is red. It's not real red at the moment, but this thing has grown really well, which is exciting. I've always wanted an apricot tree. Some neighbors down the road had one when we were growing up, so we always got lots of fresh apricots. So it's put on almost 2 feet of growth already, and it's only been in the ground for maybe a couple of months, 2 or 3 months. I've been dumping some of my compost in the trench, let it break down some, and then spread it around. Here's the nectarine. It's doing pretty well. The leaf cutter bees are getting to it some, but not too bad. And these are a native. I saw some of these down in the wash, so I was excited when I saw some growing up here. There's some kind of orange honeysuckle, and they grow native, so there's quite a few coming up here. Hopefully I can transfer some of them at some point. And so here is our cherry. The leaf cutter bees really like these. We planted one the first year, and the bees and the ants completely killed it. So we'll see how this one does, but love our fruit tree area here. This trench is for the gutter, so all the water off the roof will run into this trench and kind of flood and water this area during the monsoon. We haven't got to see it run yet. We've had just a tiny bit of water in it, but it's pretty dry until the monsoon, so we don't get much water in it. And here's another fig. So here is our sycamore tree. This is what we have our gray water running to. It's starting to grow. The top didn't completely come out. The birds like perching up on the top, so I guess we'll leave that for now. It's doing pretty well. I'm disappointed that it's a pretty late tree. It didn't come out till the beginning of May. So I was hoping for something a little earlier. The cottonwoods are out a lot before that. And that was something else we were considering, but we couldn't find one. But this is a really pretty tree. We got this for only $89 at Ace Hardware, and we planted it in the winter in February. So we weren't sure how that would work out, but it's doing well. Excited. Hopefully it'll become a great big giant tree. We'll see if it likes our gray water. We try to be careful what we run down the drain. So hopefully this will do well. So here's what we have planted in front of the house. These are salvia. These are a variety that can withstand our cold temperatures. We planted these 2 last year, and they're doing really well. The animals love them. The hummingbirds come up and feed on them, and we've seen the spotted squirrels and birds and all kinds of things, so we planted a couple more. And here's one we planted on the other side. Trying to get some mulch around all these plants, and we started putting some rock across the back. And this is a yarrow. I planted this last year. It really struggled for a long time, would wilt during the day, but now it's established and doing really well. We have had javelina come up to the house. They've never bothered the salvia, but the rabbits sometimes mess with this, and then they dug up. I had 2 of these. I don't remember what these are called, but they did quite a bit of damage to these, so now I have to have cages around them. The javelina don't come around too often, but they can sure do a lot of damage. So here's the discounted mimosa tree we planted in the winter. We didn't think it was going to come out, but by late May it finally started spreading out of the base. So excited it's alive and it should do all right now. So there's that, but the top didn't come out at all. And here's our elderberry tree. We planted this a couple of years ago, so this tree is 2 years old. I had to take the cage off of it because it was outgrowing it. So far nothing has bothered it, so we'll see how it does. We have found this tree likes a whole lot of water. If it doesn't get watered, the leaves kind of shrivel up and get small, but I've been watering it a lot lately and the leaves are looking great. But it does take an impressive amount of water. It's a Mexican elderberry. We got a bunch of mulch around the base of it now. They're more of a bush. They don't get real big. It smells really good and is doing awesome. So here is the Afghan pine we planted. It's disappointing it did not make it. It started yellowing pretty soon after we planted it. And then it just yellowed all the way down. It's got a tiny bit of green still at the bottom. I thought maybe it was a disease and I could cut it off and keep it from spreading, but that has not helped. So not sure what happened to it, but disappointing it didn't make it. I did put coffee grounds and Epsom salt and various things around it trying to revive it, but it just never has been happy since we planted it. The ants really attacked it the first year before we figured out what the problem with that was. And here's the latest thing we planted. Not ideal to plant it when it's so hot, but this is a purple robe tree. We had some of these in New Mexico that did really well, really fast growing, have pretty big clusters of purple flowers. Show you the tag there, but unfortunately we got it out here and the leafcutter bees just love it. So there is not much left here. But hopefully with the netting, it can recover. My daughter has tried planting roses, and the bees really attack them also. And there's just not a ton you can do about it as far as I know. But if y'all know of any way to keep the bees away, let me know. I've tried spraying neem oil, especially before I knew what it was that was getting them. Those bees are just pretty brutal. And here's a mesquite tree on the end of the house. We're watering this one, hoping we can get it to really grow and shade the end of the house here. Have a couple of water containers here. We got a jug there that we water one of the trees that's further out with. So here's this side of the house, and this Mexican bird of paradise is doing really well. I removed some of the stakes and one of the branches got broke off. But this was just a tiny little twig when we planted it the first year, and it gets a lot of the heat from the sun in the evening, so I wasn't sure how well it would do here. But it seems to be pretty happy and is doing well. Need to get some mulch around it. And here's our last one. I always forget what this is called. I think maybe it's a cypress. So it's struggled quite a bit. The ants have got it quite a few times, but it is starting to come back out. And then I have some flowers planted around. They all have to be covered. We have a lot of rabbits around. So it's definitely a challenge getting things to grow in the desert, but hopefully we can get some of these to survive. We love our yuccas over there. The pond is just on the other side. Excited for the monsoon season. We'll see what that brings. Hopefully nothing too crazy. We can get some crazy rain and windstorms. Thanks for watching and join us again next time.